Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, welcome to this afternoon panel discussion with the topic Democracies Defeat Dictators. I'm Vladimir Kara-Murza. I'm a Russian opposition politician, historian, journalist, and former political prisoner, and it is my distinct honor to moderate this conversation. And I would like to, first of all, introduce our first speaker, Tawakkol Karman, is a Yemeni journalist, politician, and human rights advocate. She was one of the public faces of the Yemeni revolution in 2011 that ended the Saleh dictatorship. She has co-founded and leads the organization Women Journalists Without Chains, and she's a co-recipient of the 2011 Nobel Peace Prize. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. I'm so happy to be with you here today. And really, when Peter sent me an email and told me that the theme of the Halifax Security Forum is about democracy, I was truly so happy. So happy. And I said, finally, that those people who believe in security, that they will think about freedom and democracy at the same time. So unfortunately, for many years and through my trips around the world, when I was talking about our demanding, our desire for democracy and freedom, I didn't say that really believe on that stability in the region will come with freedom and democracy. So with this title, I think there is a new knowledge, there is a new movement that gather, that link peace with democracy. And we told them that real stability cannot come from dictatorship. And they told us that, no, you have to choose between security or freedom, between stability or democracy, as if these values cannot be together. But the reality is democracy is the real foundation of both the national and international global peace and security. The truth is that the absence of democracy is the greatest threat of both security and stability. Now, democracy, as you know, and as I said, that builds stability because it rests the legitimacy, not repression. Institutions, not individuals. Participations, not exclusion. So when people have voice, they defend their states, not fighting it. Democracy prevents crisis before it happens, because creating peaceful channels for grievance and competition, it's guarantee that to prevent the conflict before it erupts. It also guarantees the peaceful transfer of power, which is very, very important. Without that peaceful transfer of power is the main resource of igniting the wars and conflict. The democracy guarantee that the peaceful transfer of power. If the transfer of power is not peacefully, of course, it will lead to the conflict and war. And it reduces extremism, and this is very important. It reduces extremism and it reduces the terrorism, which is, when people can participate, vote, protest, criticize, and organize freely, the appeal of violence disappears. It also fights corruption. It fights the abusing of power. And corruption and abusing power is really the source of the conflict and wars. Transparency will be there. Accountability will be there. People will be their voice will be the one who will ask the people in power on what they do? And what will they do for the future of their countries? So, but the authoritarianism is something opposite. It fuels chaos, wars, terrorism, and mass displacement. Any attempt to build security without democracy produces a temporary and fragile security and peace. So now, today, the world is witnessing rising tension and collapsing security. Not because of people, no, not because of people, but because of the regimes that despise the law. That despise law, because regimes that despise truth, because regimes that despise institutions and people. Yes, war has many causes, including economic injustice, climate crisis, but the primary driver of conflict is the authoritarian role. It is now considered that the major wars of the last century were launched by the undemocratic regime. We saw that with the Hitler Nazi. We saw that with Mussolini. We saw that with the Imperial Japanese. We saw that with the Stalin Soviet. We saw that with Saddam Hussein. We saw that with many dictators. The last century, most of the wars was a result of the dictators, of authoritarian regimes. And now, Russia, Iran, and China turning the same pattern. Look what is happening in Ukraine. If Russia were a democratic nation, they wouldn't invade Ukraine. So the war in Ukraine wouldn't happen if Russia were democratic. It is the product of an imperial mindset that views nations as territories to be so loud. In Yemen, my own country, regional autocracies, Iran from one hand, Saudi Arabia and Emirates from other hand, both of them participated in collapsing my countries. And both of them participated in collapsing Arab Spring countries because they are afraid from democracy. Iran supported Houthi militia from one hand, and Saudi and Emirates, they have their own agenda to control Yemen, to occupy Yemen, and to practice their influence and hegemony in Yemen, and to divide Yemen. And they are an authoritarian regimes. In Sudan, the authoritarian regimes, UAE, fueling the war there, supporting the RSF militia, toppling the dream of Sudani people to reach to democracy, turning the great victory of peaceful revolution from a peaceful transition to the democracy to the civil war. And in Gaza, in West Bank, unfortunately what is happening there, the Israeli committing crimes there and the occupation there, it's really something seen of the authoritarianism and the new authoritarianism there. We see that also in Venezuela, in China. So even now, that is with the authoritarian regimes. Now let's talk about democratic regimes. Let's talk about the democratic regimes. The democratic regimes, they have new forms of authoritarian are emerging. The first, the war on Iraq and Afghanistan, occurred, by the United States and Britain and some of the Western countries. Yes, they are democratic countries, but they didn't practice the democratic values and principles. So the democratic value, it is not just a system of government. It's continuous commitment to the rule of law, human rights, transparency, accountability, and human dignity. When those principles violated, any state begins to drift toward authoritarianism. And also, From other hand, what we see now, that now the democracy in these countries, in Western countries, is really in decline. What we see with the universities of president or faculty are being, dismantled. Students are being arrested. Freedom of expression are being eliminated. So, and also there is another tyranny there, which is the rise of hatred, of racism, of Islamophobia, of anti-Semitism, of xenophobia, and this kind of new authoritarianism. We should fight it, and we should stop it. So what should we do? What should we do? We must hold firmly to democracy. We must defend democracy, because it is the only weapon that we can face the dictatorship around the world. The most important weapon. And we should start, I am from the global south and suffer from dictatorship and still fight and sacrifice for democracy. But while I will not give up, my people will not give up their freedom and their will to reach to democracy, and we will win that battle one day. Sooner or later, we didn't, and we will not give up. But I'm saying that now we have to start from here, from the Western countries. From here, the Western countries, that they should defend on their democracy. Because if the democracy fails here, it will fail everywhere. So we need people in these Western countries to gather all the democrats, all the people who believe in democracy. They have to gather themselves to be governments, organizations, media, independent. We have to be one hand to face all this, deterioration in democracy in the Western countries. And when we talk about defend on democracy, it is not just to go to the vote, to vote for Democratic Party or Republican Party or any parties here in Canada or any. No, it is not just going to vote. It's a full recipe. Start with accountability. You should hold, I know that all of you are officials, but I'm telling you, and I'm telling myself, that you should be held accountable. That's very important. Accountability is very important to protect your countries. Otherwise, those people they will hijack the power, and you will not regain your countries again. You will betray in your countries and in the coming generation. So it's very important. Full recipe, accountability, human rights in general. Start with the freedom of expression, freedom of the universities, academic freedom of students, the freedom of assembly, all transparency. I'm shocked with the absence of transparency that is happening now in the Western countries. I'm shocked because it was the biggest model that I dreamed for my country. But now all what I suffer, not all, not all, but there is a lot of things that I was against in my country. Now I see it, at least in the United States. So this is very important. Depend on your democracy, the dependence of your judiciary system, the check and balance. That is very important, and also stop supporting dictators. Stop supporting dictators. They are the one who collapse in the global security. And because of them, now you are facing all this deterioration in racism, in xenophobia, in everything. If we give big alliance, we can tell you how dictators in our countries spread their hands to your countries and collapse your democracy and collapse your coexistence and attacking your social fabric. So it's very important to stop supporting dictators and to stop playing double standards. That is very important for democracy. That is very important for democracy. And this is, from our side, we will not stop fighting, sacrificing for democracy, for freedom, and we believe in that. And that is our destiny. We will not give up, no matter how much the price that we will pay. And now, you have a lot of challenges, I will say just 3 challenges, or 3 many important issues, and I will end my speech. The Ukrainian war is a test for democracy in the democratic countries and democratic camp in general. So the so-called Trump plan is, in a sense, a plan to hand Ukraine over and legitimize Putin's aggression and occupation, rewarding him for his destroying cities, displacing millions, and occupying, the cities of Ukraine. Such proposal do not end wars. It's embolden Russian fascism and encourage another tyranny everywhere. So the West must ensure that Putin gain nothing. He should gain nothing, Putin, in this battle. And that Ukraine remains fully free, independent, and sovereign within all its borders, from the first kilometer on the Polish frontier to the last centimeter along the Russian border. This should be the free land of Ukraine. If we want to stop the authoritarian regime, we should stop Putin from his occupation and war in Ukraine. And Ukraine is the first line of defense of all Europe and all humanity. The second issue is my country, Yemen, and which is, you see, when you ignored the will of people for democracy and for freedom, what is happening? That there is a militia attacking the Red Sea and the entire global security and peace. So the democratic camp must support the Yemeni people against the Houthis and against Iran's project behind them. The Yemenis, supporting Yemenis, supporting us, we Yemenis are able to stop Houthis, not bombing Yemen, not occupying Yemen, not supporting Emirates who divide Yemen. This encourage Houthi and make Houthis stronger and stronger. So if you want to stop Houthis, you should support Yemenis people for freeing their countries. And you should support, and you should stop Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Emirates from playing that bad role on dividing Yemen and playing hegemony and guardianship in Yemen. Palestine, it's very important. And I'm saying that not just for Palestinian people, also for Israeli people. It's very important that peace to be there. It's enough conflict, enough war because of the Palestinian issue, because of the Arab-Israeli conflict. It's the time to give Palestinian people their rights. It's the time for their self-determination. And it is not a luxury. It is not a gift. It's a right written by the international resolutions. That is very important for global security. It's your time now to stop. And it's very easy. Very easy. Give them the right to self-determination, to build their new state, and they can. They can live with Israeli people. All of us, all the people in the region, this is nonsense conflict and wars. We Muslims, are Jewish, Christian, none can live with each other. But we need a brave leaders, like yesterday I said we need a brave leaders that give the first step for giving Palestinian people their rights for self-determination. So, thank you so much. I will end with a very few words that the authoritarian regimes wins only when democracies fear and abandon their values. But when democracy unite, believe in themselves, and defend their values and principles, democracy prevails, democracy defeats dictatorship. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I want to, before anything else, present our other distinguished speakers this afternoon. So to Tawakkol's left is Olena Tregop. She is a Ukrainian civil society leader and a longtime champion for transparency, accountability, and good governance. After Ukraine's Revolution of Dignity, Olena worked at the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, where she coordinated international assistance and launched several major reform programs. Since 2017, she has served as the Secretary General of the Independent Defense Anti-Corruption Commission, known by its acronym NACO. And alongside her anti-corruption efforts, Olena Tregop works to identify and close loopholes in international sanctions mechanisms directed against Putin's war machine. Olena, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you.
To her immediate left is Dr. Comfort Arrow. She's the President and CEO of the International Crisis Group, an independent, non-profit, non-governmental organization that works to prevent conflicts and promote policies for a more peaceful world. She has spent her entire career working either on or in conflict-torn countries. Alongside her previous work with the Africa program of the International Crisis Group, Dr. Arrow has also served at the International Center for Transitional Justice and worked with the United Nations mission in Liberia. Dr. Arrow, thank you so much for joining this conversation. And last but certainly not least, on my immediate right is Andris Kubilius. Andris Kubilius is a scientist, a statesman, and in my view, one of the most visionary and strategic thinkers in today's European Union. A co-founder of the Sąjūdis movement, a movement for Lithuanian independence from the Soviet Union, Andris Kubilius twice served as Prime Minister of Lithuania and was a member of the European Parliament, where he was the standing rapporteur on Russia until last year. And since last year, Andris Kubilius has been serving as the first ever European Commissioner for Defense and Space, perhaps the most important and the most challenging portfolio in today's Brussels. Andris, thank you so much and welcome. So our title today is Democracies Defeat Dictators. And for someone from my generation, having grown up in the 1980s and 90s in the Soviet Union and then Russia, the title of this conversation is non-negotiable truth. Of course, democracies defeat dictators. The 80s and 90s were the time of Huntington's third wave, Fukuyama's end of history, a time of unparalleled expansion of freedom when countries as diverse as South Africa and South Korea, Brazil and the Philippines, the whole of Central and Eastern Europe and Russia itself shed dictatorial rule and opted for democracy. And I must confess that despite everything that's been happening in these last many years, I still believe that this maxim is true. It may take longer, it may take more effort, it may take more commitment, but I fundamentally believe that democracies still do defeat dictators. But when I put myself in the shoes of my children's generation, my oldest daughter is 19 years old, and I'm thinking that, people from that generation in Russia, they've spent their whole lives under the Putin dictatorship. They never knew any other reality. And if we look at what was happening globally, the story has also been far from glorious. Freedom House has now documented continuous decline in freedom around the world for 19 consecutive years. And in their estimates, the proportion of the world population that is living under unfree societies, 40%, is the highest it has been in 3 decades, since the mid-1990s. And we also see that dictatorships behave in an ever more brazen fashion in geopolitics and in international affairs, and that democracies do not really provide the pushback that we all hope they would. And this introductory video was just a perfect illustration of that, and we need not go any further for examples than to go to the news story that has dominated conversations at this forum, the Trump ultimatum to Ukraine, the so-called 28-point peace plan, which to me, frankly, reads more like Vladimir Putin's Christmas wish list. And so the first question I want to pose to our speakers, and I would like to go in the reverse order of presentation, so starting with Andrews. Do democracies still defeat dictators? And if the answer to that question is not certain, what do you believe the free world should do to make sure that democracy and democracies do in the end prevail? Andris Kubilius.
Well, thanks a lot, Vladimir, and pleasure to be here. Well, you presented me as a former scientist. It was so many years ago that, immediately I started to bring back my memories. And last year I understood some paradox in my life, that it was exactly what it was possible to calculate, that I spent 34 years under Soviet oppression and 34 years in Lithuanian democracy and European democracy. So I have some kind of experience. And when I was looking at such a nice movie, it brought me again some of my memories from that pre-democracy time at that time in Soviet Union, and how the change came. And the change came because at that time the West has very strong leadership for democracy. First of all, President Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and we can name and name and name, John Paul II, and the West had strategy. And that's what, in some way, at the moment, we're still missing. But since I came from physics, again, many years ago, I still have some kind of love to some kind of, try to find the law, regulation, and so on, what is behind the processes. And I was very much impressed by Samuel Huntington, third wave, where he explains that democratization of the world in the 20th century was going in some kind of waves. The first wave was back in 1920s, second one after Second World War, the third one was exactly 1980s, 1990s. And as former physicist, immediately I calculated that the distance in between of those waves is around 30 years. So we're coming to the, exactly to the fourth wave of democratization, if you look from that point of view. Now, more precisely, or more practically, if to speak, I see really, my now responsibilities and my wish is really to look into European continent and to raise some kind of, again, very simple but very big questions. Can we imagine that on the European continent we can live in sustainable peace? Not only with peace in Ukraine, but for the whole European continent. To try to bring back this again, what I would call dream or whatever, or formula of all the Bush,
Europe whole, free and at peace.
Yeah, Europe whole, free and at peace. Because what we are, especially my country, Lithuania, Baltic states, we're living for hundreds of years in a permanent threat of Russian, authoritarian, Tsarist, whatever, Central Committee, aggressions, and so on and so on. The question is very simple for us. Can it be different? And if it can be different, then how we can go into that? I know that this topic, can Russia be different, is dividing the Western, community. There are a lot of people who has a lot of arguments why Russia is not able to become different, that Russia forever is authoritarian and so on. I'm always saying that this is not an argument which can, be very much convincing. Because I do not believe that nations can have a genetic disease which does not allow it to become democratic. Somebody is saying China never will become a democracy because of Confucius, philosophy and so on. Let's look into Taiwan and Taiwanese democracy, which we can, simply sometimes even envy. Or let's say, I know some Russian historians are saying that Russia cannot become a democracy because still it lives, with some kind of legacy of Tatar-Mongolian, ego, occupation, and so on. Let's look into Mongolia. And Mongolian democracy, different, global democracy evaluations looks quite good. So that's my argument. Now, coming a little bit, closer to so what's really, what we can do and what is needed here. And in my view, really we still are missing, first of all, some kind of European Union strategy, how we can help transformation of Russia back to normality. That is, in my view, when we are talking about can authoritarian, can democracies win against authoritarian regimes, I would say, or can democracies defeat authoritarian regimes? For me, the question is not can we defeat Russian authoritarian regime or not. For me, the question is can we win Russia back to normality? And here comes the question of our strategy, how we can help. Of course, we shall, all the changes can come only in Russia itself. Changes, Russia can become a normal country definitely without Putin. I do not believe that Putin, can change itself into good friend of all the democratic countries. And so then the question is, I see very crucial moment exactly now. Because the changes or possibility of transformation in Russia can come, first of all, if we as Europeans would have very clear and strong strategy towards Ukraine, and if we would understand that exactly strategy towards Ukraine, creation of success of Ukraine, is a possibility to assist Russian transformation. So that is what is needed at the moment. That is why we need to see our support to Ukraine, which that Ukrainians deserve all our support. But we need to see also that this is a gate to something bigger, to possibility of strategic changes, geopolitical changes, tectonic changes in the whole European continent. And this is the way how we can get, possibilities to live in the European continent with a sustainable peace.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andres. And I think it is an undeniable lesson from Russian history that internal repression and external aggression are always two sides of the same coin. And whenever the government in Russia is disregarding the rights and freedoms of its own people, it's not going to respect the borders of its neighbors. So I think that your message couldn't be clearer that, frankly, the only true guarantee of long-term peace and security in Europe is a democratic Russia. Dr. Confidero.
Thank you, and thank you for this particular theme, but for the entire weekend. I just want to pick up and really thank you for your speech, because I want to flip and dismantle the title of the session. Because as a conflict prevention organization, we don't principally work on democracy, but it's one of the key indicators that we look at. And we have been facing this challenge for quite some time. But suddenly it's taken on a different meaning. Why? Because suddenly we find the West, which was a concluding part of your remarks, we find that the West itself is in crisis. A crisis about self-doubt, about its confidence, but a lot of the values that it has underpinned its own societies. And suddenly, this big question about defeating dictators, dreamers, things that the rest of the world, quite frankly, has been battling with for a long time. So first, credit to the Halifax for putting, I would say, the West on a spotlight, because that is my big takeaway from this conference. It is about the challenge, whether it's existential or not, I don't know, but it really is also about Western version of democracy. I think we should be frank about also what we're talking about as well, and that's what you are going to. Because a lot of these issues that we're raising today didn't start on February 2022. Didn't start also with what was going on in Gaza. In fact, Gaza is a symptom of that as well. These are issues that have been at the forefront of the struggle for governance, for rights, political rights. Somebody early on said, if you have innovation, if you have development, if you give people creativity, that itself allows you to have democracy. Sorry, no, people want basic, simple rights. They want to be able to compete in the political space as well. So I just want to say thank you for what you said, because you put the spotlight on what I actually think is the core conversation that we're having today, which is about the threat of democracy in the Western Hemisphere, in the Western society, from North America to Europe and these regions. Because this is not an unusual conversation for Yemen, for Sudan. Thank you for raising for Sudan, for Haiti, for Venezuela. I want to credit you also for saying to you that you fought the regime change already last year in the elections, and that was lost to you also. And when you look at places like Myanmar, where people have been fighting for these things for a long time, and the reason why you get a debate now about the double standards is because on the altar of the fight for these things in other places, democracies themselves, oftentimes Western democracies, have compromised the fight that a number of these societies have been trying to have. So when societies say to you that every 5 years, we don't go to elections and assume that the outcome is a democratic process in somewhere like the Sahel, and you sacrifice our democracy in the name of a security-first approach. And then you wonder why the countries like the Sahel push you out of their region, because you have stolen their version of democracy, because you came and told them a different story about democracy. They thought democracy was about governance, they thought democracy was about basic rights, and suddenly they were told it was a security veto. And then suddenly the West is surprised why you kick them out. And then you look at somewhere like Sudan, where people struggled and fought for revolution. They fought for justice, they fought for governance, and at the moment of asking for the things that will be crucial to underpin democracy, we abandoned them. That is why the revolution was lost in Sudan. And that is why you gave space to the Rapid Support Force and to the Sudanese army. Let's look at the Democratic Republic of Congo. If you're worried that the norms are being eaten up, we are presiding against mass expulsion. We are facing down territorial grabbing. We are facing the worst norms of non-aggression. It's not just happening in Europe, it's happening in the Great Lakes regions. But there's no consensus, there's no unity among those who are the custodians of democracy. They abandon those rights, they abandon those values on the altar of the Great Lakes. And let's look at Venezuela. When it suits you, you talk about democracy. When it doesn't suit you, you talk about trafficking. The same with Ecuador. In Ecuador, you decide, well, this is the kind of government, this is my friendly government, so I ignore the fact that most of the drug trafficking that we're watching today is also taking place in Ecuador. But we quite like the government there, so we'll abandon democracy as well. So I think we should also call out what we're really talking about, that we've seen an existential crisis in the Western part of the world, where there's been a high-stakes complacency about what democracy means, and you wake up and suddenly you find out that the values and norms and principles that you espoused, that you preached around the world, suddenly is being torn down on your borders as well. And that is why now you have this unfortunate contest, an unfortunate doubting, an unfortunate questioning about what we mean about democracy, when so many people have been fighting for democracy for a long time. So I really want to thank you, because you put a spotlight on what I think is the other elephant in the room, is that what do we in the Western world really understand about democracy, and making sure that we do not undermine the values that you seek to implant in other places of the world. Do not sacrifice them for the sake of a security-first approach in other parts of the world to get your own national interests secured as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Arrow. Olena Trego.
Thank you. And I'm honored to be here, and I want to start by thanking Halifax Forum and Peter for the moral clarity of this gathering, for how much you put Ukraine at the spotlight, and for you to help everybody understand that Ukraine war, it's not just one of many conflicts in the world. It is the war that will determine the future of democracy, the future of freedom in the world, whether we will be able to preserve our security, our way of life. And it will influence not only the future of Russia. I agree with Andres, of course, that their future of Ukraine, the Ukrainian victory, it's the best recipe for transformation of Russia. That's 100%, but it's not about Russia only. It's about the future of South Korea, the future of Taiwan, the future of China, of Iran, of all those beautiful leaders that we saw in the video. We in Ukraine now are at the forefront of this big fight between two models, dictatorship and freedom and democracy, and we essentially became the victim of Russian aggression just because Russia did not like that Ukrainians are democracy, Ukrainians are free people. This aggression started after Euromaidan revolution, after our people demonstrated their power. And Putin hates those kind of things, and Putin doesn't want a big European country next to him where people are like that. And thank you that at Halifax this message is very clear, because I go to different conferences, and believe me, it's not like that everywhere. I have to deal with a lot of disinformation, and I'm actually even convinced that dictatorships, including Russia and China, they are winning their information war, because the messages I hear about, even from Western speakers, like the British journalist, about a staged Western coup in Ukraine, or from a German historian about Ukrainian Nazis. I hear all of that even today in 2025 in European countries, and this is very disturbing. This is absolutely true. It's happening because democracies, the West, they lost the clarity. They started to have doubts in themselves, and I hear these conversations in the West, in Europe, where people are saying, hey, we cannot build children's hospital for 25 years. We are so incapable, but Chinese would build it in 1 year. And China now has better technology, and why don't we all be like China? Or let's look at Russia. Russia has such a great charismatic leader, how great it is. And when I, as Ukrainian, hear this, of course, it's very painful, because my nation are actually the people who are ready to die for values, who are ready to die for freedom, for democracy, and those are not empty things for us. And just to give you like a little perspective, I wanted to use this opportunity to explain to you how genuinely in Ukraine we are able to defeat Russia, and we are able to win this war, and we are still standing after 4 years of a full-scale war, because we are democracy. That's the main reason. It's a symmetrical war. Russia has almost 5 times more population. At the beginning of the war, Russia had 10 times bigger defense budget. Russia has its allies, but we are still standing because in Ukraine, our society demonstrated innovation, creativity, demonstrated a lot of initiative in order to defend their own country. And I am Ukrainian myself, but I myself was amazed at our Ukrainian people, how they stepped up and how they decided to defend their country, not just in military terms, but civilian-based defense, meaning that in Ukraine we have this network where everybody thinks, how can I contribute to defense? If I am IT developer, I would want to develop maybe software for drone, and it's incredible if you think about it. Our very successful information management like software for the frontline called Delta, which is owned now billions of dollars, was developed by an NGO, and it was proposed to Ukrainian army after beginning of the war in 2014 that, look, you have a paper army, our army was not reformed, and it's very hard, and you need to have a short decision-making cycle, around 7 minutes from top to bottom. Why don't we make everything cloud-based? Why don't we digitalize everything? So citizens came to military and they cooperated and they made it happen. The same thing with the fact that, of course, we are now the drone capital of the world. Who created all these things? Ukrainian citizens, the civil society did this drone innovation. Other things like basically everything you see in Ukraine, even I myself, I represent Anti-Corruption Council of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. How do we have Anti-Corruption Council in Ukrainian Defense Ministry? It's just very simple. After we had a corruption scandal at the beginning of the full-scale war related to procurement of food, we came to the ministry and we said, Ukrainian society is not happy about what's going on. We would like to propose that you create an oversight body, you select 15 people from society and empower them to oversee some big procurements and give them access to information, because this is what society wants. And in Ukraine, usually officials say yes to these proposals. And that's incredible because there are not so many countries in the world where state and society is that open to each other. And this is our secret weapon. And it's very sad that Russia and Putin, they don't understand the power of one single person, the power of society. Putin, why did he decide to attack Ukraine after he saw Euromaidan revolution? Why he did not understand that all those people on Maidan, they stood up against corruption, against Russia, because they wanted to be free, they wanted to be European. He decided, he did not believe that those are people. He decided that this is all somehow staged by his enemies, by the West and so on. Then he tried to invade Ukraine in 3 days, but then those same people who were standing on Maidan, they went to defend Ukraine. They prevented Russia from taking over. And this is very sad, that those dictatorships, essentially, they don't believe in the power of each individual person. I think we should win this war. We should prove that every person matters and the freedom of individual matters. And actually, democracies are stronger than dictatorships because of that, because of all this creativity and innovation. And now, in particular, my organization, we are studying in detail how Russian war is sustained by cooperation with China, North Korea, Iran, how those countries are providing lifeline for Russia when it comes to Russian technology, Russian ammunition, Russian covering up internationally Russia, defending them from sanctions, from economic collapse. And what we see actually, that this war, it's not only about changing our world into a multipolar world, but it's about essentially building this authoritarian alliance. And we see it more and more, especially after 2022. And we will soon release our study where we analyze in detail about how they exchange intelligence, how they exchange technology, how they essentially work together to defeat democracy. And it's pretty scary, even though it's not an alliance where those are 4 countries that are really trusting each other, and it's not a multilateral alliance, it's more a patchwork of bilateral agreements and relationship. But the way they intensify this cooperation and the way they basically have this target to destroy and to undermine and to build the war machine, it's pretty scary. And I hope that we will become awakened by this here in the West, in Canada, in Europe, in US, because essentially I think everybody in this room doesn't want to be living in a dictatorship, and we still believe that democracy can be successful and a wonderful place and environment to live in, and we should be ready to defend it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And I think it's a very important message that it's Ukrainian democracy that Putin sees as the threat. You know, when Putin talks of Ukraine as a threat in his propaganda sort of sense, there's actually a grain of truth in that. Not, of course, in the sense that he means it, because yes, we know that the hot phase of the war began in February of 2014, but actually if we go back to the hybrid methods of the war the Putin regime led on Ukraine, it goes all the way back to 2004 in the presidential election when the Kremlin tried to push its puppet Yanukovych to power. And then after the success of the Orange Revolution with all the energy blackmail and the gas wars, this has been going on for more than 2 decades, because I absolutely agree the biggest threat that Putin sees is our closest neighbor becoming a successful democracy, because it would only be a question of time when Russian citizens would start asking, well, why do our closest neighbors have all these rights and freedoms and we do not? So this is a central message, I think. It's not only the Ukrainian state, it's Ukrainian democracy that Putin finds so threatening to him and to his dictatorship. Tawakkol Karman.
I like all the comments here, but something is very important. You said that comparing between the China and as a authoritarian regime that has all that successful in development, while there is deterioration in the development in the democratic countries. With this, China built one hospital in one day, and for me, I want to fix my bedroom. It will take 1 year in the US, for example. So this is very important comparison, and but it's dangerous, and we shouldn't accept it. We shouldn't accept it because, and before I'm telling going to the details, there is a very dangerous war against democracy as an idea. And that is very important thing. It is not just the occupation, it is not the authoritarian regime wage wars and make violence, but there is another war, which is creating a new narrative that democracy is not helpful. Democracy is not working for nations. Democracy is lazy. Democracy, etc., attacking the idea of democracy, and we shouldn't allow that. Because the problem is not with the democracy as an idea. It's because of the democratic countries didn't implement the criteria of the democracy itself. This here is the problem. We shouldn't, and I listened to this question many times. Many times, it's through 3 years. Does this democracy works? Is it a good tool of governance? It is. So no, this is not the question. The question is, did we implement the democracy in a very well way? Is there a real democracy in the United States, for example? I will tell you, no. No. Democracy that doesn't guarantee accountability, that allow, for some people who, in other, belief, but who allow that a president who is accused with corruption and with sexual assault to be a president without accountability, that is not democracy. So if we go with so that is not democracy. Democracy that doesn't questioning their rulers is not democracy. So what is the deteriorating is because we didn't, because I am one of them, we didn't implement the democracy as it should be. And now, saying that China as an authoritarian regime is the good example for ruling, no, it is not. First, there is no transparency in China. You don't know what is happening in China. The transparency here, because this is why we know our shortages in democratic. Do we know how many people are poor in China? How many hidden conflicts in China? China, who kills millions of people in Uyghur people there, are they, is it a good, tool of governance? So and with this is what they said for us. When we make the revolution against the dictators, they said, no, don't make the revolutions. The dictators is bringing the stability. No. What happened, the chaos that happened after the revolution, it came because the dictators didn't build strong institutions. When they leave the authority, then this institution will carry the country. It's the tool, it's the producing by the authoritarian regimes that build everything to be just in their size. And when they leave, the country collapses. And this is what happened with Russia and with China. And don't we know that China, you have to be very strong. China is not a good model. It is not for stability because it's a fake stability. Any stability under dictatorship is fake. It's fake stability. And for us, when we make and this is a very important point for us, as I belong to Arab Spring, that we dare to challenge the dictators, went to the street, peacefully with flowers, with dreams against the dictators, calling for freedom and democracy. And we won against those dictators, 8 dictators in the region through just 15 years, 8 dictators. We forced them to leave the power. And inside the transitional period, we made a great successful. 2 years, 3 years, there was some small mistakes, but we did a great successful in the transitional period, with democracy, with freedom of expression, with many things. But what happened after that? What happened after that is the counter-revolution. Counter-revolution that doesn't want democracy to prevail. Counter-revolution that toppled the democracy in Sudan. Counter-revolution that toppled democracy in Yemen, led by Saudi, Emirates, and Iran. And with the complicit of some of the Western countries. And they see to us that we don't deserve democracy. Those people doesn't deserve democracy. They let dictators rule them. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. We deserve democracy, and we will gain our democracy, and we will serve the world with this democracy. And it is not for our sin, it's for all the humanity. Really, it's for humanity. So we are in that battle, and we know that democracy deserves that we die for it. Yes, democracy, and we will continue that. So no one tell us that China is a good model, that Putin is a good model, that even America is a good model. No, we have our own model for democracy. Full recipe. Accountability, transparency, rule of law, the independence of judiciary system, freedom of speech, women's rights, kids' rights, all this, and this is what we will do. Promise. And we have to be together to do that. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe in the people. Really believe in the people who were very brave to step down Bashar al-Assad, to step down Muammar al-Qaddafi, to step down Ali Abdullah Saleh, to step down Hosni Mubarak, Ben Ali, who ruled Yemen, the region for decades. They are, and to step down Putin. I trust that Ukrainian people, you don't need even the American support. You will free your country. Don't give up and don't accept the Trump recipe for the peace. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. And to the point that, this false argument about dictators offering stability, I think it's actually difficult to think of a more unstable system where everything depends on one person. As Mikhail Bulgakov wrote, the problem is not only that a human being is mortal, it is that he's mortal unexpectedly. And this is the most unstable system, I think, that we can find on the planet. We have a few minutes for questions from the audience. Please, when you ask a question, identify yourself. Please stand up, please identify yourself and indicate whether your question is directed at the whole panel or at any particular panelists. Sir, we'll start with you, and there's a microphone there.
Thank you. Rafael Rohozinski, SecDev. It's a security conference. One thing that struck me about the video, that not only were we talking about dictators, we were talking about nuclear dictators. I think that's something that really bears us to think about. Are there limits to the way that democracies can defeat nuclear dictators? In the sense that moral assuasion, I'm with you. You know, democracies offer a model that perhaps dictators don't. But at the end of the day, if we look at why Trump's 28 plan to Ukraine is being talked about and why Europe's plan probably never will, it's because the US is a nuclear power.
So I think that's a very logical question for the European Commissioner for Defense, Andreas.
Well, I would not answer the question, will Europe have, nuclear power or not? Because who knows? We are now, standing for independence of Europe, as Commission President always is repeating. So let's see. But well, yes, nuclear power is quite a, important argument. But nuclear power is important in some way when you are talking about relations or disputes among members, among different, countries. I don't know if nuclear power is very strong in defending dictators against their own people. And what, and when we are talking about democracy defeating dictators, I am not so sure that this is a very, how to say, precise formula. Dictators usually are, defeated by their own people. The question is, how can we help those people? How can we encourage those people? How can we help the countries of fresh democracy? Because if you will look into, developments of democracy, sometimes it's more difficult to, stabilize young democracies than to remove dictator. And that is what we have seen with Arab Spring and so on and so on. And where we can come, with a lot of different assistance instruments, how to help those young democracies. So nuclear is nuclear. Nuclear is, there are some military people from Europe, they can explain much more than I, about nuclear developments and how Europe will move. But nuclear is not, in my view, is not so powerful when we're talking about dictators against their own people.
Thank you. Professor, please have a microphone in this area. Yeah, that one's closer.
Hi, Rosa Brooks, Georgetown University. I come from a country that used to call itself the leader of the free world. And I wonder if you could talk about, from your perspective, as many of you, what does courage look like from US allies today in talking to and about the United States? And you've emphasized the importance of courage, and many of you have taken risks and suffered enormously for standing up for human rights and democracy. We're at a moment when I think it's fair to say the elephant in the room is that my country is sliding in the direction of dictatorship. And we're all here being rather polite about it for most of the day. What should diplomats say, diplomatically or undiplomatically, to and about the United States at this moment to help it remain the democracy that we all want it to be?
Thank you.
Well,
I will say it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it.
You want to say?
No, you'll say it.
Yeah, no, I think that Ukraine is now the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
We demonstrated it by action, not words. And regarding United States, when you talk to US people, you see that Americans in their heart, they all cherish freedom. So it's hard to imagine how they can turn into being a dictatorship. And I believe that US will bounce back from the current environment you have. But I think it's important right now to reach out to people, to have this people-to-people contacts. And when, I see a lot of support even among people who are supporting Trump, who support Ukraine, just because there are a lot of people who see this war as freedom war, and America has always been for freedom. So I don't believe that you can change the whole nation just because currently your leadership has a little bit blurred moral compass and hugging with dictators. Because America, it's American people, not leaders.
Yes, yes. I agree. I agree with this, that American is American people. I lived in America last years, and before, I love them so much. I really, not just American, all Western countries, people, they are so kind. They are so, when they listen to your stories, they really want to help. And in general, the problem with you is with policies, not with people. And now we have a very big rising in the, look, there is a rising of dictators, but at the same time, there is a rising of people, of the awareness around the world. And this is the biggest victory for the humanity now. And this also came by the social media, by the Gen Z, that they are so brave, and they say the truth. And this is also what I want to tell you about your question about diplomacy and diplomat people. You have to say the truth. You don't say that I am a diplomat and you hide the truth, because you have something that my country has their, their agenda or their policy in some time, so I will give them advice on the law. When you see something, tell them the truth. Tell them the real advice. One of the things that make Yemen fell under the Houthi militia coup, it was the misleading and misinformation came by the ambassadors. By the ambassadors to their countries or to the world. They said, and if you read the statements of the ambassadors in Yemen, while Houthi militia wage their coup, you will hold them accountable.
This is the issue.
We told them that they are militia. They don't believe in democracy. They are racist. They will kill Yemen. They said, no, they just came and they will eliminate some traditional power. They helped them. They raise, reports. Because they hate some group or one group or that group. No, say the truth. And now even with what happened in Gaza. And I have a lot of friends, they are Israeli people, they are Jewish people, they are against what's happening in Gaza. They said that there is genocide there. So you should say that there is war crimes in Gaza. Say that as ambassador. Either your government accept or not accept, say it. Say it. So it's say the truth. Sleep with your conscience is, satisfied. That's it. Enough. Again. What happened in Yemen? Just look what ambassadors wrote when Yemen fall under the Houthi militia coup. I invite all of you to see what American ambassador said. They told him that they raised the death of America, death of Israel. He said, no, it is just slogan. They don't mean it. He says that. The same thing with the European ambassador, British ambassador. They play a very bad role on helping Houthis to invade Yemen. And the same thing then with Saudi Arabia and Emirates when they waged the war. Thank you.
Dr. Aaron, last word goes to you.
Oh, no, I mean, again, the elephant in the room, the reason why I'm glad that Halifax put the spotlight on this is that I don't think this is about the rest of the world. I think this is about democracy as it's been played out in the West and the double standards in which it has been approached, the degree of complacency. We pay lip service to conflict prevention. We pay lip service to early warning. We pay lip service to all these governance rules, and suddenly you're seeing a tsunami of events that, quite frankly, the original sin, where do you want to put the original sin? 2014 or 2004 or 2009? Every effort that could have been taken to avert a Ukraine situation, right? There was so many I told you so situations. So, Peter, thank you for putting this on, because this is not about the rest of the world. This truly is also about the compromises, too many compromises, that have been made by a number of countries who, quite frankly, knew what was going on, but in the name of national security, chose shortcuts. And so this is why we have the catastrophe that we're seeing today, not just in Ukraine, by the way. And I appreciate the focus on Ukraine. But we are watching catastrophes in so many other parts of the world. And I'm sorry, but if you think the norms collapsed in Ukraine, they collapsed quite some time ago, in Syria, in the height of Libya, in the height of Egypt, in the height of Sudan. You're not even the final chapter, I'm afraid to say. And we keep paying lip service to all these things, and I'm sorry to say, you're not even the final chapter. Because we saw Gaza, and Gaza is not even the last chapter.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you for raising this, Peter. But we cannot afford to continue to be complacent, because we will be back here next year, and I will have a list of other countries for you to be concerned about. If you think the rules have been smashed, they were smashed a long time ago, before you got to the doorsteps of Ukraine. I'm afraid to have told you that.
What I meant is that it got to a new level. What country before Ukraine was invaded and its territory was annexed last time before in history?
First state-to-state territorialization in Europe since the Second World War, with Crimea in 2014, in 80 years.
But even worse than that, do you know how many times we've said never again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times? I've lost count.
Yeah, of course.
Which is why I say, I'm sorry to say, you're not the last. Gaza will not be the last. You will sit here next time and we'll count the amount of times that everything is breaking up. But faith in people and everything that you said.
We'll reconvene in this room at 5 o'clock for the Halifax chat with the former Prime Minister of Israel, the Honourable Ehud Barak. Meanwhile, please thank our speakers at this panel, and thank you so much for taking part.